Start spreading the news. I'm leaving today. I want to be a part of it. New York, New York. I want to wake up in a city that doesn't sleep, to find I'm a number one, top of the heap. But like, only with regards to late 19th century fictional detectives, because that's sort of my thing, you know?
Yeah, so I'm Helen Greetham, aka Jabbage, and I'm the creator of a cosy Sherlock Holmes point-and-click game called The Beekeeper's Picnic, which is available now on Steam and itch.io. As a result of creating said game, I was invited to be a guest at 221BCon, which is a Sherlock Holmes and other assorted media convention which takes place in Atlanta, Georgia. Not New York, but I kind of wanted to visit New York. So this video will kind of comprise of two halves. There's me running around enjoying New York, and there's also me running around enjoying 221BCon. I will be putting timestamps probably in the description so that you can skip to either one of those which interests you, or watch it all. I had various anxieties before setting off on this trip. I really wanted my house to be clean, but I think some of this frantic cleaning activity you are currently seeing on your screen was a result of kind of nervous energy. I was a little bit worried about travelling to the US as a European creative right now. I'd heard various horror stories, and lots of my friends and family were a little bit concerned about my plans. I also had this weird logistical thing which was worrying me, which was that when I'd tried to book in and get my boarding pass for my flights, there was no seat assigned. Now, I was travelling absolute shoestring budget, economy light, and I hadn't bought a specific seat, so I was thinking, where am I going to end up? Does this mean the plane is overbooked and I do not have a seat? So I took a train early morning to the airport, unsure if I was actually going to be able to fly. I had a quick English breakfast on arriving at the airport, which included my last bit of decent bacon on the trip. Sorry, Americans, you have a very different idea of what bacon is, and I like the British bacon more. I always feel like food while travelling, particularly when airports are involved. It's a little bit like playing Oregon Trail, where it's like, okay, the food is really expensive at Fort Laramie, but what if I don't get a chance to buy more provisions later? And then I guess like when they give you food on the flight, it's a little bit like that hunting mini game that I was never any good at anyway. So I was going to be taking the Leif Erikson approach to getting to the US by hopping to Iceland first, then flying over Greenland and down through the north of Canada to New York. But the big question, did I have a seat on the plane? Thankfully, not only was the answer yes, I had a first class seat on the plane. It was amazing. I felt like I was in a public information film about the wonders of air travel. They didn't really make a distinction between the actual first class people and me, someone who'd paid for economy light and been sat in first class because there was no other room. So this saw me eating a delicious free meal and watching a documentary about Icelandic horses while enjoying my additional legroom and pillow. Also, they had available the music of Daði Freyr, the winner of the Eurovision Song Contest 2020, as far as I am concerned. Maybe seasoned travellers wouldn't be into it, but I quite liked having this little pit stop where I could get up, stretch my legs, and resist the urge to buy little trinkets and animal skins. When I got to the US, I think I basically Bertie Woostered my way through immigration and customs, because I became incredibly polite and incredibly incompetent. I was just like, oh, am I supposed to be standing here? Oh, you want my fingerprint? Which hand do you want my fingerprints? Oh, am I pressing down hard enough? And eventually they were just like, please just leave. So I think I basically like privileged British white personed my way through immigration. I was staying at a Catholic guest house. That's a guest house run by Catholics, but not necessarily exclusively for Catholics. It was well rated for solo travellers, and I can see why. It felt very safe, it was quite quiet, it was basic, but it was also cheap, And they did a very good breakfast. Welcome to my exciting Catholic guest house, New York, Manhattan accommodation, featuring such delightful features as this admittedly clean, which, you know, I'll take it, but very utilitarian kind of like hospital ward floor, desk, safe, which is nice. This chair, there is a television, so I might check that out later. Delightful view of just the most New York looking alleyway in the history of alleyways. A wardrobe, although is it in fact a closet? The bed, which was comfortable enough, I guess, and the most exciting part, featuring a sink and like, I couldn't work out how to flush this. I was like, I just, there wasn't like, but it's there. That's where you flush it. You push this thing. And these, like, do these even work anymore? Probably not. They've been like painted into oblivion. The next morning, I set out in my best British tourist outfit. I was just ecstatic thinking about how my writing of The Beekeeper's Picnic had been the catalyst to bringing me here, to New York, to that moment where, you know, you wake up in Manhattan. It was a bit of a pinch me moment. I went around filming fire hydrants because I was that excited. I decided perhaps my best way to open the trip was to get a boat tour all around the island of Manhattan, get a bit of a lay of the land. I ended up with perhaps the most American tour guide ever, who, after finding out that I was from England, began calling me Miss England and making a lot of comments like, "You don't get that in London," which there were like 200 people on this cruise. It was quite amazing that he singled me out. He was just very enthused about New York and America and their singular greatness in a way which was both slightly infectious but also very alien to me. I liked how he kind of emphasised the history of immigration in the US. He chose his words very carefully, but I think he wanted to make sure to get that message of acceptance in there. I then stopped off to sample some of the local cuisine. And like, I joke, but this quarter pounder did actually taste completely different to the McDonald's quarter pounder that I'm used to. It was really nice. It was also very cute that it was a teenage girl's birthday and everybody in the restaurant sang to her. Also, this pie was really good. We do have McDonald's pies, but they have a completely different kind of pastry, so. Next, I headed to the Museum of the American Indian, which is a free-to-enter museum run by the Smithsonian. I didn't take many pictures, but I really enjoyed my trip there. They had an exhibition where they had lots of artefacts sorted by the different cultural groups which had produced them, all the way from the Pacific Northwest down into Central and South America. I imagine as a museum it's probably quite a contested space, but, you know, I quite like that. I quite like it when museums are having to keep on their toes a little bit. The next day, I did something which I think people might regard as slightly eccentric. Having made my way to Manhattan, there's so much to do there in Manhattan, I decided to leave Manhattan. But I kind of wanted to see a little bit more of the city. So I got on the Staten Island ferry, which leaves from the south of Manhattan over to Staten Island. I'd been really, really cold on the ferry yesterday, so my first thing to do was try to buy some gloves. I found out that all of the clothes shops, like TK Maxx and things, they were in their spring season. They were not selling any kind of gloves. My salvation came in the form of a guy just selling hats and scarves on the ground in front of the ferry terminal, and he sold me some really nice kind of thermal gloves for $15. This was marred slightly by the fact that the person who came up after me was like, "How much are these gloves?" And he said 10. So I guess I got a little $5 oblivious tourist extra there. When I got to Staten Island, I headed off on a bus to the target of my expedition, which was historic Richmond town. It's a very cute little attraction, almost like a local attraction in some ways, which I think has been around since the 1850s. And it's kind of a living history museum. It has lots of historic buildings which have been preserved. Some of them have been moved to that site after initially being situated elsewhere, and they've been restored. Unfortunately, I was there a little bit out of season, so in the summer season they apparently have a lot more reenactors there, doing crafts and letting you into the houses, but I had to basically just have a little tour of the houses from the outside.
Oh, it's like a bar. Oh, I hope I get to go in there later. That looks really fun.
There was also a little museum that was just utterly empty, but it had some really good exhibits. I particularly liked one looking about how you can tell changing attitudes towards child rearing through how cots and prams have changed. So like, are they open? Are they closed? Can you rock them? Do they face the mother or do they face outwards? It was really interesting. When I went to talk to the staff there, I think they were a little bit worried about the fact that I'd arrived a couple of hours before my tour. They thought I was going to be quite bored. They vastly underestimated my capacity for looking at old buildings. I found 2 hours going around with a map looking at all the buildings and reading about them was absolutely adequate to my needs. The tour was really wonderful. The tour guide was just so lovely, so charming. Also going round on the tour with me was this kind of Anglo-French family. They lived in France, one of them was British, and it was really funny because I kept running into them again later on in the day. I met them again on the bus, I met them again on the ferry, and weirdest of all, I met them again on the subway, like when enough time had passed that the chances of me sitting next to these people on the subway again was pretty small, I would have thought. That evening, after returning from my trip to Richmond Old Town with my feet throbbing with the fact that I'd been walking all day, I had a bit of an unexpected pleasure. See, I really like going to the theatre, and I'm signed up to lots of these like mailing lists and apps that will try and get you like last minute cheap tickets, and I thought, hang on, I am in New York. This is the perfect place to try and use these resources. And I was delighted to get just incredibly cheap tickets to the Magic Flute at the Met Opera. It was a very bad seat, to be fair, but I did find there was nobody sat behind me, so I kind of like sat on my coat and gave myself a little boost, and then I could see the stage just fine. I have a feeling this will spoil me for all future operas. It was pretty amazing. Multiple people were wearing capes. Capes! I really loved the way it included the use of video and animation and screens, but it didn't feel intrusive. It just felt really playful and interesting, and it was just, it was amazing. However, after my unplanned late night at the opera, I couldn't sleep in because the next day I wanted to be at the Metropolitan Museum of Art at opening time, and my plan was to see as much as I could before the gates closed. There are actually 2 sites for the Met Museum. There's the main one, which is off Central Park, which is the huge museum full of stuff. There's also this other site called the Met Cloisters, which is this strange mock European continental style monastery, which has a lot of medieval art in it. Now, the Met Museum, the main site Met Museum, is large enough that you could literally spend days there. So the sensible thing to do if you only have one day to visit the Met is to concentrate on that main site and just bypass the cloisters. However, I have for many years had in my living room a facsimile, a reproduction of one of the unicorn tapestries, which is hanging in the Met Cloisters, and I just could not get that close without going to see it. Like, I had to go and see it, even if it was going to take a chunk of hours out of my day. I needed to. So I was there at the door as it opened, and I got to see the tapestries. The Cloisters is a really strange environment to find in Manhattan. I imagine if you live there, it's a really nice, calming, peaceful place. I found it a little bit weird as somebody who can hop on a train and visit my choice of about 5 medieval cathedrals, an hour and a half in different directions. There was something a wee bit humorous about travelling all the way across the world to visit like a fake one. I got really excited when I found a pottery ram from Scarborough. I was like, yes, Yorkshire solidarity. But it actually had more of a Spanish and French provenance for many of the things. So once I'd had my fill of looking at unicorn tapestries and not taking video of them for some reason, I hopped back on the subway and rushed down to the main Met site. And I knew I had to be really, really efficient with my time. So I picked out top things I wanted to see. I wanted to see the Egyptian exhibits. I know that the Met has lots of really large monuments, including the Temple of Dendar, which was transported to the Met after basically going to be destroyed by the creation of a dam and the flooding of the area where it was, so it was packed up and shipped to the US. My favourite thing about the Temple of Dendar is that it features all these Egyptian gods and Augustus. Like Caesar Augustus, he's there, he's meeting all the gods, he's having a great time, offering them stuff, it's great. I really wanted to see all the American stuff because that's obviously, new and exciting to me. I really liked all these interiors that were there. It was really interesting comparing them with the things I'd seen the previous day at Richmond Old Town. Because, the fanciest house in Richmond Old Town was nothing compared to some of the fancy interiors here, which were more like rich city merchants. Of course, I rushed off to see all the old masters and familiar names that I could. In a lot of ways, it felt like seeing the twin of the National Gallery in London. Lots of the same names, the same figures coming up. But I still missed so much. Like the entire European Paintings Gallery, I didn't see it, and that is a huge section. Didn't go see their Stradivarius. So, yeah, I think unfinished business there for sure. I hope one day my path will lead me back to New York and back to the Met Museum. It's the evening before I fly out to Atlanta for 221BCon, and I thought that this would be the correct sort of dramatic moment to enumerate my various anxieties and worries, which will all hopefully turn out to be for naught. And I think they mostly boil down to I won't like it and people won't like me. So I won't like it is because I really appreciate fandom culture, but it's always been a world that I've been looking in at rather than part of. And even when it comes to Sherlock Holmes, I've made this game and I started this book club. I think actually a lot of that was me creating a space to enjoy these stories, which wasn't aligning completely with traditional fan culture. And I think with Sherlock Holmes in particular, it's really interesting how there are these two spheres, which are kind of almost operating separately, in that you have this sort of fandom sphere, and then you have this more like traditional kind of literary society type interaction with it, and I've always gravitated more towards that. And add to that the fact that this con has its history in the BBC Sherlock series, which I've barely seen and am ambivalent about. I think there's a fair number of panels where I'm just like, I don't know what that means. So that's the kind of I'm worried I won't like it side of things. Then there's the I'm worried they won't like me, which isn't... That's like an extreme way of putting it. I think it's more like this is a tight-knit group of people. Many of them have been going to this for, 14 years or something, however long it's been going for. This might be the last year, so I think emotions are running high on that. And I am a complete outsider. So I'm just, I'm prepared to be a little bit outside and a little bit on the fringes. So I kept talking about my anxieties for an additional 7 minutes. Let's just skip through that. I had in mind I was going to create a really thorough vlog of the convention, but I realised very quickly that it's quite intimate and, filming people who didn't want to be filmed would be creepy, so there's some pretty sparse videos for this section. I've mostly got some crowd shots and footage of people who were kind of down for being filmed. But the long story short is that the worries that I had just didn't materialise. I'd love to give a huge thanks to the organisers of 221BCon and all of the attendees for greeting me so warmly and looking after me so well. I mean, for starters, I had a lovely hotel room which utterly trounced the Catholic guest house.
Oh my goodness, it's got like a chaise lounge. And a huge bed! Oh! And possibly a device capable of boiling water? I'm hopeful. Like, yes! Yes! Okay, there's one tea bag.
People were just so warm and inviting, and I quickly discovered that it was a really diverse bunch there. There were people, sure, who had their roots very firmly in BBC Sherlock circa 2012, but there were lots others too. There were Sherlockians of all stripes. I even met some members of the Baker Street Irregulars, who are the first Sherlockian literary society in the world, and very famously, by invitation only, they're very exclusive. So although things happened like people were talking to me about Sherlolly and I had no idea what that was, or likewise people were getting really nitty-gritty into, the chronology of the stories, which I'm just a bit oblivious about, I didn't really ever get a sense that anyone was testing my knowledge or trying to make me part of an in-group, out-group situation, which, I'm sure does happen at any event where you get people meeting about stuff they're passionate about, but I felt that wasn't the predominant culture, which is lovely. It was genuinely age 8 to 80 plus. And I did have the advantage, I'll admit, that people kept coming up to me, actively pleased to meet me. I am not used to people kind of being like, it's Helen, it's Jabbage. And I hope I did okay for all those people. I hope I gave you what you wanted out of that interaction with me. Thank you so much. You really made me feel so welcome by showing that enthusiasm, and it was incredibly touching. I can imagine that somebody coming in maybe without that special treatment of being a guest and not knowing anyone might feel a little bit adrift, but there are loads of ways to make contact before you go to the con, and there was such an atmosphere of camaraderie. I bet it's a fairly easy place to make friends. I really loved there were all these fringe events, like there was a writer's room, there was an event centered around recreations of like early 20th century soda recipes. I'm gutted that apparently I missed a seance in which the spirit of Arthur Conan Doyle was attempted to be summoned, which is hilarious. On the first day, I got to hear all about the fashion and clothing of Queen Victoria from the Queen herself. And the Atlanta Radio Theatre Company did some lovely radio plays, absolute highlight for me. I think my own panels went really well. I gave one about the Beekeeper's Picnic. It was pretty well attended and everybody said nice stuff, so I guess that went well. I submitted some artwork to a silent auction and kept checking in on it. That was quite fun. I took so many pictures with cardboard cutouts. It's kind of crazy to me looking back that I'd been worried that I wouldn't have enough to do or there wouldn't be enough events that interested me. In the end, I was joyfully busy from the moment the con began to the moment it ended. Even the prom in the evening, which is not normally my scene, it was very mindful of sensory issues. I think it was very warm and friendly. I stayed a little while, which is phenomenal for me because I don't like dark, loud places. And the really excellent news is that it's not the last convention. So I'm just left wishing I could teleport myself to Atlanta every year to do it again. Unfortunately, stupid Frontier Airlines had rescheduled my flight back to New York from being mid-morning to being 5 a.m, which meant a very early night for me. The bad news is that I was very, very tired, but the good news was I did at least have an entire day in New York, and I think I actually found a pretty good thing to do in New York if you're running on not enough sleep. The Museum of the Moving Image is this brilliant museum out in Queens. It had a whole exhibition about Jim Henson, which left me a little bit starstruck.
Oh my gosh, it's him.
Getting to see all these puppets for real, getting to see all of Jim Henson's sketches, getting to see that outfit as worn by David Bowie, all very exciting. One of the reasons I thought it was a really good museum to visit while I was incredibly tired was there were lots of opportunities to sit down and watch screenings, which meant getting off my feet and getting to chill. So I watched some restored Max Fleischer cartoons, and of course loads of stuff about Jim Henson and the Muppets. And when I managed to wake myself up enough, there were also lovely exhibits about the history of the moving image. All the way from zoetropes through to the golden age of cinema, to television cameras, to live TV and how it's produced. Really interesting stuff. I headed off to spend one final night in the Catholic guest house. This time I was given a room with a carpet, working Wi-Fi and a functioning television, so I guess I wish I'd been in that room the whole time. My final kind of half day before my plane left in New York was spent trying to scoop up, seeing all of the sites that I knew people would ask me, "Oh, did you see this? Oh, did you see the One World Trade Center?" Yes, I did. Did you see Times Square? Yeah, I did. It was an overwhelming shrine to capitalism, but, it's Times Square, I guess. Did you see Ankh-Morpork's post office just manifest into the round world? Yeah. Did you visit that bull statue on Wall Street? Yes, I did. I took this video because I found everybody crowding around taking a picture of its bottom really funny. Grand Central Station. Yes, I've been there. My beloved, the beautiful. Look at her. She's gorgeous. The Chrysler Building. Yes, I did go. Yes, I went inside into the lobby. That was really fun. Same with the Empire State Building. I just stuck my nose in, looked around, and went back out again. I actually spent the bulk of the time that I had in the New York Public Library. It's free to go in, there are lots of places to chill out, get a coffee, and some really interesting exhibits. Most famously, perhaps, the original Winnie the Pooh toys. But alas, the time came when I knew I needed to start heading to the airport, so I said goodbye to New York City and set off getting let me get this straight, the tube to get the train to get to the airport. Then I took the plane back to the UK, where I then got on a bus, back to my home city, where I got on another bus, where I ended up back at my house. And then I slept for, I kid you not, like 3 solid days. It really did a number on me, a mix of jet lag and just running really low on sleep at the end there. I don't know when the winds of fate will bring me back to the US and back to New York, but a huge thanks for watching this. I hope it's had the same feel as like when your relative goes on holiday and comes back and is like, "Oh, I need to show you all my videos and snaps." Okay, buy my game. Goodbye.